So in this video, we're jumping back into gear and we're going to be talking specifically about mixers. So we're going to first cover why you might want a mixer, which mixer you should choose, and then we're also going to cover the basic setup and use of a mixer. So let's dive on in. Before we actually dive into the different mixer options, let's cover why you would actually want to use a mixer. Really, what it comes down to is audio quality. That could be one reason. If you're just using a USB mic, you're going to get an okay audio quality. But using an XLR cable, you're actually going to get much better audio quality. So that might be a reason why you'd want to use a mixer, is actually just to boost that audio quality that you're getting when recording your podcast. Another big reason is that you want to record multiple different sounds, multiple different inputs. So maybe you have a couple interviewees either Skyping in, or maybe a couple live in studio, or you want to be able to play sounds through your iPad that everyone who can hear, even if they're over Skype, for example. So that's actually how I use it the most, is actually, so I have a person, an interviewee on Skype, I have me with my mic, and then I also have audio inputs coming in through an iPad using an app called Boss Jock that actually will play audio questions from a listener or sound clips, for example. So you can actually put all of that together and make sure that both you and the interviewee, as well as the recording device, hears all the sounds. Another real big reason why you might want to record using actual mixer is because it allows you to record on a digital audio recorder like the Roland here. We've mentioned it in a previous video, but this is actually where I record all of my podcasts are recorded through the Roland. I'm not talking directly into it. I'm talking into my microphone. The interviewee is on Skype or something like that talking, and it all gets mixed together through the mixer and goes into the digital audio recorder. The reason I do that is because, one, computers are much more likely to crash. You know, if you have a computer program open, it's high probability that it could actually, not high probability, but it's very likely that it could crash and you'd lose that entire interview if it's recording. Not something that you want. That also, when you're dealing with Skype, you know, it's already, connectivity can be an issue, especially if you're doing like a video podcast or something like that, for example. But even with audio, you can sometimes have weird issues with Skype. So we want to take everything away from the computer so it can just focus in on Skype and providing that great connection, that great audio sound. So I actually don't do any recording on the computer. I do it all through the digital audio recorder. So that allows more processing speed to be had by the computer, and the computer can just focus in on providing that great Skype interview. Okay, so which mixer is right for you? I'm going to give you two options, the more affordable, almost budget option, and the premium level option. For our affordable one, we have the Behringer 802. This is a great mixer, and it is at a very affordable price. It's going to allow you to get that audio quality, to start doing some of those things that we mentioned just a second ago that a mixer is great for, but it's at a price of around $60. It makes it very accessible to almost everyone. The other recommendation is to go with one of the Mackie mixers. Mackie is a more professional mixer, a higher quality. The Behringer is kind of basically built as a little knockoff almost of the Mackie. The Mackie is where kind of the powerhouse is. It's built like a tank. It's going to have a few options that just make it much more convenient, nicer than the Behringer. Just even looking at the two right here, you can notice some of the differences. These are both 8-input mixers, and you're going to notice the Mackie has, for example, has 4 XLR cables. This particular model does. That's part of the reason I upgraded to this one. It also has the sliders versus the dials for the volume level. It has a mute button, which is very nice, and that the Behringer 802 just simply doesn't have. But otherwise, for the most part, a lot of the things that you need as a podcaster, you're going to find here in the Behringer 802. So if you're ready to make that step, but don't want to necessarily jump all the way into the more expensive Mackies, you can jump into a mixer with the 802. One thing you want to for sure consider when choosing your mixer is the number of channels. So you can find Behringers with different arrays of channels. You can find Mackies with different arrays of channels. For example, the big thing I look at when, and one of the big reasons I went with the Mackie finally, because I used this Behringer right here for a long time, but the one reason I really went with this is because I wanted to do more in-studio recordings. So I'm going to have several microphones plugged into through the XLR cables, so I need more XLR inputs. So like the Behringer, 1, 2. So at most, you could have 2 XLR inputs, and then you're also going to notice really it kind of has 4 separate channels or 4 separate volume levels, because you can have line 3 and 4 are together as one, so you can plug one here, plug one there, and you can have actually 2 different inputs, but they'd be controlled by the same volume and all the same settings. So really 1, 2, 3, 4, whereas with the Mackie, we have 4 XLR cable inputs, but we also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate channels. So I actually get like an extra channel, really is essentially how I look at it. And it essentially will take 8 inputs, but there is a separate channel there. So I really love that. That's the big reason that I jumped up to the Mackie, is because of that. I also just like having the sliders and the mute buttons as well. Okay, so now how in the world do you set these up to actually start recording your podcast? Let's first look at doing a solo option. We're going to focus in on the Behringer just because that's the one I think that most people are going to get. Like I said, if you're ready, jump up to the Mackie. We might cover that later if enough people are interested in specifics, but the Mackie is very similar to the Behringer in terms of where the cables all get plugged in. Just the operating is a little bit different. So with the Mackie, first of all, you're going to have your microphone, maybe the Heil, maybe the ATR 2100. One of those two is the recommended ones. But you're going to plug the XLR cable right there into that first channel. Then that is where your mic input's going to be. Your volume's going to be here. Everything for that channel is right there in that row. And so your volume knob is right here. Your gain knob is right here. Pan here, and FX is right here. Don't even worry about the EQs. We don't need to mess with the EQs at all for any of the things that we're going to be doing. What you're going to need if you're just recording a solo episode is actually, that's it. Right there, you're pretty much good. You're going to plug in terms of inputs. So you're going to plug your headphones right there. You might need an adapter like this that goes from an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch, or you might have the bigger Sony headphones. For me right now, I was just doing a video, so I actually want to use these headphones for video instead of the big bulky Sony ones. The Sony ones, you get a higher quality in terms of the sound you hear, and that's what most people use. I definitely recommend those. Those have a 1/4 inch plug-in, so you can just plug that directly in. But if you're using a different set of headphones like these ones, and the reason I got these ones is because when doing video, I can actually tuck them behind my head, and if you look, they kind of disappear. It makes it less noticeable in the video, so I can still hear the person I'm talking to, but you can't necessarily see these big bulky headphones that stick out and are eyesore basically. But if you're using any other headphones besides the Sonys or another one with a big 1/4 inch plug-in, you're going to need that little adapter right there. And then the last thing you're going to need is you're going to need to plug this cable into your 2 outputs. So the right side goes here, left side goes there, and then that goes into your digital audio recorder, where again we record all of the sound that's coming through the mixer. Now let's say along with your solo episode you want to play a question, audio question from a listener that you already have recorded and stored on your iPad using the Boss Jock. And we'll cover Boss Jock in a later video and how to actually use your iPad to do some mobile podcasting in a future video. But let's say, for example, you have a clip already loaded up. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get one of these cables here, and all these cables will be linked up with a PDF that I'm going to include in this video, but you're going to want to take this cable and you're going to plug it into one of the channels. For here, we're going in channel 5 and 6. So the 5 and 6 right here, and then you just will plug the other end into your iPad. And then you can hit the play on your iPad and control the volume right here. So it's nice and easy to control that. Okay, so now the next situation is, let's say you want to add that Skype interviewee, someone who is coming in off of your computer, either through Skype, through FaceTime, whatever, but you're recording an interview from your computer. You're going to need a few different cables, which I will link up in the PDF, but you're going to plug that into a separate channel. You're going to plug the right and the left in into their own separate channels so you can control the volume, the balance, the FX, which is going to be crucial because this is how we're going to run a mix minus, which we'll talk about in just a second. But you're going to want all that in your own separate channel. That cable then gets plugged into the outside of this little Griffin iMic, and that's linked up too. But you're going to want to plug that into the outside. And just to check, you're going to want to make sure that the iMic is on line and not on mic. Okay, that's important. So the iMic should be on line and not mic. And then what you're going to do with the other end is you're going to find the FX send. Okay, so the FX send, and you're going to plug that into the in on here. Okay, so you're plugging the FX send on the in. And just with the cables I had lying around here, I needed that quick little adapter right there to make that work. And from there, you just plug your iMic right into your computer, and then when you're selecting your microphone, for Skype, or you go to Skype preferences and audio visual and then select the correct preferences so that both your speakers and your microphone are selected as the iMic. And then you're going to want to make sure you do the mix minus for the person that you're actually talking to, your interviewee. So the way that works is you have this FX button here. You are going to, what this does, FX is, sound effects essentially, and we have the person on Skype can hear everything that is coming in through the mixer, through the FX send. So let's say, for example, you're talking on your microphone, you have a listener question that you want to play from your iPad, and then you want to make sure that they hear both of those, but then also that their voice from Skype and all of those get mixed together and into your digital audio recorder. So do you follow that? So you have all those, you have basically 3 different inputs. You have your microphone, you have your iPad that's playing the listener question, and you have your interviewee on Skype. All that needs to come together and be sent into your digital audio recorder. Now the issue is that if you just take in the microphone if you just take in the microphone from Skype, and with the way we have things set up here, the person on Skype will likely hear their voice on, a half a second delay because it has to run through everything. They're gonna hear themselves talking. It probably won't even be a half a second, but it'll be enough to really kind of freak them out because they'll hear themselves talking and it'll just really mess them up. They'll have a hard time conducting the interview. So what you need to do, and the reason we plugged into the FX send, is so that you can turn down the FX volume of the person who is on Skype. So this is the channel 3 and 4, that is the channel for Skype, their Skype interviewee. So we want to turn the FX down on them and only them, so that way they don't hear themselves, or they can still hear everything else that's coming in the mixer. They can still hear you, they can still hear the iPad question, but they won't hear themselves after, on a second delay. So that makes it able to really conduct that interview. Weird little thing, I know, but just set that up the way I mentioned and it'll work perfectly for you and you won't have to worry about it again. So just turn down the FX for the interviewee that you have on Skype. All right, so let's dive back into how to actually operate the different mixers a little bit. First, we have the volume button. For the Behringer, it's actually a dial. So kind of the neutral volume is at 0, and then if you want to turn it up, you go towards the plus 15, or turn down, you go towards the negative infinity. On the Mackie, rather than having the dial, we have a slider. I personally like sliders, but I've been using this dial for 8 months, and there's really not a big deal. Generally, you're going to set up your volume at the beginning of your interview. You're going to have yours probably set and stay the same forever, but the only one you'll have to adjust is maybe your interviewee. You might have to adjust theirs up or down a little bit, but once the interview starts, for the most part, you just have to set it and leave it so the dials work just fine. The next thing we want to talk about is the pan. That's this black knob right here and right here on the Mackie. Pan is what allows you to have, so say if you're on a stereo, you can turn it all the way so the volume is all the way in the left or on the right side of the stereo audio file. The only time I really ever use this is if I'm doing a Skype interview and I know that we're having some issues with their sound. And so we might need to actually adjust, do a little more audio editing afterwards, and I simply want them on 2 separate tracks. I'm still going to record into the Roland recorder, but I want those tracks actually separated. So what I'll do is I'll take my mic, turn it all the way over to the left, and I will take the Skype interviewee's mic and turn that all the way over to the right. So basically we have my voice all the way in the one side of the audio file and the interviewees all the way in the other side. And then when I go in post-production, I can actually extract both those mono files. So basically I'm taking a stereo file, extracting it into 2 mono files, one with my voice, one with the interviewee's voice. And then we already quickly mentioned about the FX. That is on both of them. On the Behringer 802, it's called FX. On the Mackie, in this particular one, it's called the auxiliary. So you're going to just want to find that and adjust those accordingly, like we mentioned for this mix minus. Then I wouldn't even touch the EQs. I would leave them all in the center so that you get the most unaltered sound. That's really what you want. The next thing we're going to look at is the gain button. On the Behringer, it's a little black button right here. On the Mackie, it's a little gray button. The gain is kind of, it helps make it helps the microphone pick up more sound is basically the best way to describe it. So if you're having a hard time hearing your voice when you're talking into your microphone and you've already adjusted the volume some, you might want to actually raise the gain up a little bit too. Because if you raise that gain up, it's going to get louder. The microphone's going to pick up more sound. The problem is that it's also going to pick up more background noise as well. So as a general rule, I like to try to keep the gain as low as possible while still getting a good quality sound through my microphone. And then the only other really big difference is with the Mackie, you get a little mute button right there, which is nice and convenient if you just quickly need to silence something, just hit the one button, want it to come back at the exact same levels, hit the unmute button. So that's very nice. So there you have it, the 2 mixers that I really recommend, the Behringer 802 as the budget option and the premium option of the Mackie mixer. A mixer may or may not be for you right away, but I strongly suggest that you look to add it as soon as you possibly can, simply because the mixer is going to take your audio quality to that next level.